Khyana. I loved her hair. To be so small, I wasn't expecting her hair to look like that. She had beautiful black hair.
Welcome to Still a Part of Us, a place where moms and dads share the story of their child who was stillborn or who died in infancy. I'm Winter.
And I'm Lee. We are grateful you joined us today. Please note that this is a story of loss and has triggers.
Thanks to our lost parents who are willing to be vulnerable and share their children with us.
If you're listening to this podcast, just know that on our YouTube channel there are pictures and videos that are related to the stories that are being shared.
Subscribe and share it with a friend that might need it and tell them to subscribe. Why? Because people need to know that even though our babies are no longer with us, they're still a part of us. Tiffany, thank you so much for coming on our podcast today. And we are so grateful that you have joined us and are willing to tell your story about Khyana. Tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of who you are, what you do, where you're located currently, and maybe where you were located at the time of Khyana's birth.
Well, at the time of her birth, I was in the DC area. That was actually working in DC. That was the first job I had out of college. And I've been there for a little over 2 years at that time, a little over 2 years, I think. And now I am in Japan
Because
working as an HR specialist.
okay, so you're in Japan for your work specifically.
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. And are there any things that you like to do per your like as hobbies, or what kind of things do you like to do on a regular basis?
I like to travel. That's been hard with COVID, but I like to travel and see new things. Since I just gotten here, I can see new things because they're new to me right now.
Oh,
So later on, they probably won't be new, but right now I am seeing new things.
yeah, I'm sure you are enjoying that. That's great. That is awesome. So, and then just as a little bit of for context, how long ago did Kayana's birth happen?
Next month will be 3 years.
So it's been 3 years since that. So it's there's
Mhm.
a little bit of time has passed by. Okay, well then, can you give me an idea of what your family looks like at the time of the birth?
At the time of the birth, it was just me and my boyfriend and I. He's my ex now, but
Mhm.
it was when we were together.
Gotcha.
We
Okay.
don't have any other kids or
Gotcha.
anything.
Okay. And were you guys planning on getting pregnant? Was that something that was on your radar?
No, it was just something that happened. I actually just had PRK like about a month before I had gotten pregnant, and you're actually supposed to wait. If you're going to even try to get pregnant, you're supposed to wait 6 months to a year. So it was a surprise. Luckily, I can still see,
Yeah.
but yeah.
That's good. So and just to for everybody, PRK is a surgery for your eyes so that you can see a little bit better. Is that correct?
Yes, it's similar to LASIK.
Yes. Okay. Wonderful. So that was a little bit of a surprise for you then.
Yes.
Uh, um, so were you concerned about that? Was that something that you were, mad about or happy about? Like, were you okay with it? I guess is the question.
um, I was actually kind of surprised I was pregnant at the time. I was shocked because first I like I said earlier, I had PRK. So it's like, oh, you're not supposed to get pregnant. So I'm like, I wonder if I like lose my eyesight. And the second thing was like, okay, well, here in this DC area is expensive to live in the DC area. But I was actually kind of happy.
Okay, that's great. What about your ex, your boyfriend at the time? What did he think about it?
He was happy when he actually believed I was pregnant. I don't know what was going on with him. He was like, the pregnancy test lies. I'm like, but I feel horrible. And but I feel terrible right now. I'm like, I feel so sick. Like this is no way it's telling a lie. So eventually I got another test to confirm. He was excited about it after that. Like
No.
he thought the pregnancy test was wrong at first.
You're like, "It's a false positive, come on." No. That okay, well, that's great then, and, how did your pregnancy go? Was it Was it okay? Were you really sick? It sounded like you were a little sick.
I was sick. At the time, I was actually I'm not morbidly obese anymore, but I was morbidly obese. I had bad eating issues as well. And like my throwing, I constantly threw up. Like
Oh.
anything in my stomach was going to come right back up.
Oh.
Yeah, that first trimester was pretty rough. They told me the doctor told me what medicine to take, and it helped a lot. By the time the second trimester came, I was a little more comfortable.
Great. Okay, well that's good. I know it's always
Yes.
tricky. And how were your checkups and as you were going along? Were there any health issues, anything that was brought up that was of concern?
Well, first trimester, besides like the throwing up and being morbidly obese, I was fine. The second trimester, they discovered that I had an incompetent cervix. It's called IC, and with that, your cervix is dilating before it's time.
Mhm.
So there wasn't really a fertility issue; it was just an issue with staying pregnant.
Yeah. And did they propose anything to do to try and help make sure that you didn't go into like premature labor?
They tried. What happened was they gave me progesterone pills to use, and I had took those. Well, it took about a week because of insurance to even get them, so they had to do some kind of authorization.
Mhm.
As soon as I got them, I took them religiously. I went back to the doctor. Come to find out that I am like a centimeter or two dilated already.
What week would you say that was?
That was 24 weeks. I
Oh,
was 24 weeks. I was about to be, I think I was about to be 25 weeks. So I was 24 weeks. I just took a picture saying with a sticker, saying I was 24 weeks pregnant.
okay. Oh man. Okay, so you were taking the progesterone. Any other things that they were trying to help kind of like you said keep you pregnant?
They admitted me to the hospital when they saw that I was dilated. I stayed in the hospital for I think about 2 weeks.
Oh.
Yeah, I stayed in the hospital for about 2 weeks, and that included having her. But before, when they found out I was dilated, they took me to it's like labor and delivery, and put me on magnesium to help keep her in. And then I went down to like another floor after that. That wasn't the labor and delivery floor is more serious. So after they put me on the magnesium and I was done, they took me to another floor. I forgot the name of it, but it's for people who are like waiting to have their baby, who don't need to be in labor and delivery, who might have a few complications, of people who've already had their baby.
Gotcha. Okay.
Put me in that area, and they gave me try to give me medicine and stuff, and make me do bed rest. But unfortunately, it didn't work. When they were thinking about sending me home, they was like, "Oh, you might can go home soon, like probably the next day or two, something like that." That same day, my water broke.
Oh, it did.
It's that same day that I was trying to get home because I don't like hospitals.
Yeah.
I don't like hospitals at all. That my water broke that day. And so I called the nurse in, and they took me back upstairs and gave me more magnesium and a ton of pills and antibiotics. And then they took me back downstairs again because they were going to try to keep her in even though my water broke,
Mhm.
as long as I didn't have an infection.
Gotcha. And tell me, were you feeling any sort of contractions or anything?
I
Nothing.
never felt contractions during that time.
Okay. So they were just basically trying to see if she would stay in as long as there was no sort of infection, then they would just kind of proceed as like just keep her in there as long as possible so that she can grow.
Yeah, they were going to try to keep, I forgot how many weeks, 32, 35, or something like that. They were going to try to wait. As long as I wasn't sick, there wasn't infection, anything was going on too bad, they were going to have to keep me in the hospital because my water broke. So I couldn't leave the hospital after that.
Right.
Anything
Okay.
can happen
Yeah.
after your.
Yeah, exactly. And just to go back a little bit, did it sounds like you guys found out that you were having a girl at maybe the 20-week ultrasound scan?
Yeah, I think it was around 18, 20 weeks
Okay, great.
decided.
Yeah, yeah, that's
So excited. We both wanted a girl.
really?
We thought it was going to be a boy at first. That's the thing. Because I went to an ultrasound before that with my regular doctor, and they was like, well, I think because I was like, can you see if it's a girl or a boy? Because it was around that time. And she was like, I can't make any promises, but I'll try. And so she tried to look and she couldn't really see much because she didn't want to move. So she was like, well, I think it might be a boy, but don't buy clothes yet. She's like, I'm like 80% sure this is a boy. So I was like, wow, okay. And then I had another ultrasound like 2 weeks after that. We found out it was a girl. So we were very happy because we both wanted a girl so badly.
That's so great. That's kind of fun. Different. You're like, oh, just kidding. I guess we are having a girl. That's great.
Yes.
Okay, so then you were in the hospital. You have been on bed rest. Yeah, you've been on bed rest for 2 weeks. Then the day that you decide to go, you're like, we're gonna get you discharged. They are trying to get you out. Your water breaks, and is that 26 weeks at that time? Then
So I was on bed rest. So I got there around 24 weeks. I was on bed rest for like a few days, and then my water broke. It was close to a weekend. My water broke.
I see.
Close to
Okay.
about a weekend.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And after that, then they said, okay, we're going to try to keep her in. But about a week after my water broke, I had started feeling I felt bad. Like I woke up that morning, I really was just like really tired. I tried to do the normal stuff. There was a set schedule like every day. Like I knew what was going to happen. I was lay in bed. A bunch of doctors were going to come in. And that was what's going to happen. I knew the same shows on TV already because I had been there just watching TV. So that day I felt really bad. And later on that evening, I could barely eat lunch. Like that was weird. I was always hungry. So I could barely eat lunch. And then later on, I just started feeling worse. And so that was like, I don't know what you call, maybe a resident or something came in. And I told him, I said, I really don't feel well. And he asked me, did I have a fever? I thought that was their job. But he asked me, did I have a fever? And I was like, I don't think so. And he was like, oh, okay, then you're probably just tired or something like that. But this is the thing, it was the evening. So his doctors come back to back evening. So even though he said that there was going to be somebody else come in at least 2 to 3 minutes later, they always came in like that in the evening. So I said, I'm just going to talk to the next nurse. I said after he left, I was like, I'm going to talk to the next doctor or nurse that comes in here.
Yeah.
So exactly 2 or 3 minutes later, another nurse came in. And I told her, I said, I don't feel good. She asked me in a few more details to describe what was going on, and I did. And she was like, hold on, I'm finna get something to check your temperature. I'll be right back. So she came in, she checked my temperature, and she was like, okay, I gotta go get the doctor. Because I had a fever, and the way I was describing how I was feeling, she was like, yeah, I gotta go get the doctor. I'll be right back, okay? And so they brought the doctor in, and the doctor was like, I'm gonna do some more blood work on you, but I think we need to go to labor and delivery. And she's like, I'm gonna get you prepped. I'm gonna do the blood work really quickly. I'm gonna get you prepped, and we're gonna go up to labor and delivery. It's time for you to give birth because you have an infection. I think you have an infection.
Okay. What were you thinking at that time when they're like, okay, it's time?
Yeah, I cried. I cried when she told me that because I was only like 26 and a half weeks. So I cried. My ex at the time, I called him because he was at home. So he came to visit and stuff, of course, but he was working.
Yeah.
But he had gotten off at the time. So he was at home. I thought he was at home. And I called him. I'm like, hey, I'm going to have to give birth. You need to come up here. And he was like, okay. He was like, he was leaving the grocery store or something. He's like, okay, I'm going to throw this in the house. I'm coming right up there. So he came. So they put me in the room. They put me back on magnesium again. And they let him in, and then they gave me Pitocin to induce contractions because throughout the whole thing, I never had contractions at all. I never really was in pain the whole time until they gave me the Pitocin to start the contractions.
Yeah, and those can be powerful contractions.
Very powerful contractions. It was pretty bad. So because I wanted to give birth without an epidural. But because I was given Pitocin, I was like, I need that epidural.
Yeah, you're like, bring it on.
Yeah, I'm basically like, bring it on. But it was pretty quick because that night is when I was induced. I had her that next morning.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Very fast.
Yeah, very quickly. So obviously when you were told that you had to have your baby basically because you have an infection, you're at 27 weeks. Had the 26 weeks. Had the doctors talked to you about what that meant? If if the baby was
Yes.
going to be born at that time? What did they tell you?
They told me about learning disabilities, breathing issues. They told me that when I first got to the hospital, got admitted to the hospital in general, when I was like 24 weeks, they told me that then. And then as I was, before I gave birth, when I was laying in the hospital bed and labor and delivery, before I had her, they was telling me about the complications. They told me that girls have a slightly higher chance of surviving than boys. They told me neurological issues, things like that could happen, breathing issues. And they gave me that. They said, I'm going to try to help her. And, all the stuff doctors usually say.
Yeah. What were you thinking about what they were saying? Were you worried about all of those things? Well, I guess the other thing is that were you worried about the possibility that she wouldn't make it?
I told my ex when we first got to the hospital, when I was in labor and delivery, when I first got to the hospital and got put into labor and delivery, I told him at the beginning, I said, she's not going to make it. I said, she's going to die and we're going to lose her. I told him that at 24 weeks and I said, she's not going to make it. He was like, yes, she is. I was crying. I was like, no, she's not going to make it. She's not going to make it. The second time the doctor talked to me right before I gave birth, I was actually okay at that point. I wasn't crying or anything. I was fine at that point. And when I gave birth to her that morning, she came out and she didn't cry. So I was like, why? I couldn't see it first because of the way they had me positioned.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, why isn't she crying? Why isn't she crying? And my ex pointed, he was like, look. And she was just looking around. Like she wasn't crying because she was so amazed. She was so surprised she couldn't cry. So that was why she wasn't crying. And so she tried to cry a little bit after they tried to get her, take her away. But she was so surprised she just looked around the whole time.
Really? She's just
Really.
looking around, observing the world, huh? She's like, wait a second.
Yes, looking around in shock, observing the world. That's why she didn't cry. So she came out and my ex was like, look, I told you she was going to be okay. Look, she's looking around. She was looking around. She's going to be okay. He went over there to look at her while they were doing like the work on her and stuff. Cause they took her as soon as I had her, they took her and they put her, it's a room kind of connected to mine. And they put her in that room and put the bags and everything on her. And he was like, I looked over and she's okay. She's fine. And I was like, okay. And one other thing they told me before I gave birth, they said I might not see her for 24 hours. And I was thinking why they said, I was like, that's not going to happen. But I made sure that didn't happen. I went to go see her.
Oh, good. So you labored, they started you on Pitocin the night before, and then you gave birth to her in the morning. What time in the morning?
I think it was like 5 something. I'm not exactly sure about the time. I forgot the actual time, but it was like 5 something in the morning.
Okay, so several hours of laboring. And when you gave birth, what was your feeling like? I know it sounds like you were a little concerned that she wasn't crying, but how did you feel?
Yeah, I was happy after I gave birth, and they said, we're going to take her to the NICU now. And after they took her away, I fell asleep immediately.
Oh,
like as soon as they took her away, I fell asleep. And then after that, I woke up and I was like, because they told me right before I fell asleep, they was like, call us when you're ready to get up and go to the restroom. I was okay. And so I fell asleep and I woke up and I was called the nurse. I said, okay, I'm ready to go to the restroom and I'm ready to see my daughter. I'm ready to go see Khyana.
Yeah.
So they helped me. They put me in a wheelchair the first time I went down there.
Okay.
To see her because it was a lot. Then they moved me. They made sure I was okay, and they moved me back downstairs again since I had given birth.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I knew they showed me where the NICU was at. So I just used the rail and walked myself. Using the rail, I dragged myself down there, like start walking. And they was like, wow, you're doing great. And I'm like, yeah, because like my daughter's in NICU. I can't wait on somebody to bring me a wheelchair. I got to go see her.
Yeah, that's great. Was it on the same floor? At least?
It was on the same floor.
Okay, good. I was like, oh man.
Yeah, it was a long hallway, or what felt like a long hallway anyway, but it was on the same floor.
Okay.
So I had to everybody's like, you're doing amazing after all of that. Like, I can't believe you can get up and go down the hall because of everything that happened. But I was like, yeah.
Yeah. So she is, so when she came out, was she breathing on her own? Was she doing okay? Like what was there any physical things that she was kind of struggling with, I guess? She is only 26 weeks, so that's why I'm wondering.
Yeah. She didn't have any like her outside. She didn't have any like physical deformities or anything. They did have to help her with breathing. They actually took her off the breathing thing at one point for a very short period of time. I think maybe about an hour, hour and a half, but she wasn't ready for it yet, so they kind of put her back on there.
Yeah.
It was mostly her insides. Her outside looked perfect. She just was very small because she was a pound and 14 ounces.
Oh, that's
So
so
she
little.
was extremely small, but her outside looked perfect. It was the inside that was having the issues.
Yeah. So her lungs were probably not developed, and
Yeah.
any other things that they told you about?
It was mainly just her lungs, and there's like, certain parts of her, insides might not have developed fully yet, but it was mainly, I think, her lungs until she was about 4 days old.
Gotcha. Okay. So, and tell me, her name is Khyana. How did you
Mhm.
guys choose that name? Is there any special meaning behind it?
Not really. See, we didn't want her to have a name that everybody else had.
Mm.
And my ex and I, we were watching something on TV, and it was something or someone, and it was the person's name was Tiana. He was like, how about Tiana? I said, no, not Tiana. He was like, okay, how about Kayana? And I was like, okay, I want to do Kayana. So that's what we decided to call her. And my sister actually came up with the spelling because I wasn't
Oh,
sure how I was going to spell it at first. My little sister came up with the spelling.
nice. Okay. Well, I love it when people are like, "This sounds good. This fits her."
Yes, yes, that's basically what happened.
So she is in the NICU, and you are basically hanging out with her, going and visiting her as much as possible. So what happens when she's in the hospital?
So the hospital that I gave birth at, that's where she stayed at until she was 4 days old. So I told my boyfriend at the time, I was like, can you bring a children's book up here so we can actually read to her while she's in the NICU? So that's what we would do. We would both go to the NICU together and we would sit down and read to her.
That is great. She's all hooked up though and everything to
Yeah,
a
it
breathing
was
machine.
hard.
Yeah.
The first time I saw her, I broke down crying because I saw all the tubes and stuff and all these machines,
Yeah.
and I started crying.
Yeah. Were you able to hold her at all?
Not until after she passed away, unfortunately. I was able to like hold her hand and stuff, but they wouldn't let me like pick her up and hold her out of the incubator type thing until she passed away.
Yeah. Oh, that's ugh. That doesn't that's not great.
Yeah, it was horrible.
Yeah. So you guys are taking some time and spending it with her. She's doing okay, it sounds like, for a few days. Obviously, she can't breathe on her own, but she is still doing okay. She putting on some weight. Where I'm assuming they were giving her some tube feeds or something like that.
Yeah, they were tube feeding her, and I was also pumping
Oh,
milk.
okay.
She did end up losing an ounce though.
Oh, okay.
She ended up going down to a pound and 13 ounces. And yeah, that was pretty rough. But I mean, there was only so much feeding her and giving her stuff that they could do to keep her weight up.
Yeah. And babies usually do lose a little bit of weight while they're in the hospital. So in that first little bit. So what then happens?
Day four, day four, we go in and or we go leave the house, we leave our house, we drive up to the hospital, we go in and we see like this x-ray machine over her. And I was like, why do they have the x-ray machine over her? And their doctors are just like standing around. And I noticed her stomach was distended. So
Mm,
I'm like, what's going on? And the doctor was like, we need to talk to you. I guess we came in at perfect timing before they called us. And it was like, yeah, we need to talk to you. Um, they thought she needed surgery. She had some issue with her bowel. They said she had some issue with her bowel and she needed surgery. And we need to transfer her to another hospital, to a children's hospital. With the level 4, because that was a level 3 NICU I was at with
mm-hmm.
her. She needed to be transferred to a level 4 NICU for surgery.
Oh, wow. Was that hospital far away from the current hospital?
They were actually right beside each other.
Oh, okay. So it
Yeah, they were pretty much beside each other.
okay, so it wouldn't have been a super crazy trip or anything to get her there. So,
Yeah, it wasn't a crazy trip. It took a minute though, because the ambulance have to get all the equipment on her and then get her there with all the equipment and stuff. So that's what took a minute really
hmm
to get
when
her.
when the doctor said that there was something wrong with her bowels, did they tell you? Was there like a blockage, or did they give you any idea of what was going on specifically and what they would have to do for surgery?
Yeah, they thought maybe there was like a hole or something in her bowel. And they kind of told me it was some procedure that they were going to do to kind of let the air out because her stomach was so distended.
Oh, okay.
So they were going to do something to let the air out of her stomach. When they transferred, they couldn't do it there. They wanted to do it at the other hospital.
Okay. So they transferred her and then she went into surgery. Is that right?
Yeah, I told her bye at the hospital. That was the last time I seen her live at at the level 3 NICU, the one I gave birth to her in. And yeah, when they transferred her, I didn't see her. I saw the cart, the thing that she was in, but I couldn't see her when they went past me.
Because you were still admitted in the hospital.
I had just gotten out, like I think a day or two before that. I had just gotten out the hospital.
Okay. So you really you hadn't been spending tons of time. You were there. I'm sure you were in the NICU a bit, but you didn't really get, that was the last time you saw her alive,
Hmm.
is right there in the NICU. So, and what kind of risks and I guess what kind of odds and risks did the doctors tell you about even that surgery as she was going into it?
They told me that the surgery it does come with risk, but it will help her. It's better than leaving her the way she was.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, she never ended up getting the surgery. They were
Oh.
prepping, getting ready to. They were going to give her the surgery. They was prepping, like cleaning up and I guess like the wiping down and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. They were prepping her for surgery, and that's when her heart stopped.
Oh.
So she never even got the surgery.
Oh, wow. When her heart stopped when she was in the OR basically. And I'm assuming they tried life-saving measures as best as they could.
They did. They came out and they told us about they were because I heard a light go off. I saw a light go off, and I was like, I knew. Honestly, I didn't want to believe it, but I knew it was hers.
Really?
It was like a cold blue or something. Some light had went off and it was making noise, and everybody takes off into that room. See, we weren't in the room at the time. We was in the waiting room.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I knew at the time, like even though nobody had told us, I knew. Me and my ex, we both kind of figured that was hers.
So you see everybody head off into that room. You kind of have this feeling, do they come out and tell you shortly afterward? What's the timeline of events there?
They came out and told us, okay, so after we saw everybody run into the room, somebody later came out. It was two people. They later came out and they said, hey, like we're trying to resuscitate your daughter. We're trying the best we can and stuff like that. It was another parent. It was some more parents in the room. I started crying after that. And that's before we didn't go back there at that time, but I started crying and lady was like, it's okay. This happened to my son as well, or something like that. She's like, this happened to my son before too. I think it's her child as well. So she's like, you'll be okay, it'll be okay. Because I was crying in the waiting room. So the next time somebody came back out, they took us back there. They didn't tell us that they were going to stop at the time. They just said we're going to take you back there with her. And when we walked in, we saw like all these people over her, like people putting, I guess, drugs into her IV, trying to give like CPR and stuff. Like we saw all that. We walked in, like I was shocked. And the doctor was like, was the exact words that she said? There's only one like a next the only step. There's only like one next step to take or something like that. And I was like, what was it? And so we want to stop resuscitation. We want to stop. We want to stop it. And I started crying, and the doctor was just like, she put her hands up, she told them to stop. But after that, I don't think there was no bringing her back anyway. But the doctor told her to stop. And after that, my ex, he stormed out the room. And I was just in the room crying. Somebody had brought brought me some water in there or something. But yeah, so somebody went and found him and brought him back, but we were devastated.
Yeah. Yeah. How could you not be?
Mhm.
So, did you get to spend some time with her after she
Yes.
passed away?
After she passed away, they let us hold her. They let us hold her, and I got to hold her like well, we got to hold her like long as we wanted to. Someone, I think a chaplain or pastor asked, "Did we need anyone at the moment?" I was like, "No, no, we don't want to talk to a chaplain or pastor or anything right now." Then the doctors and nurses they kept coming in now and checking on us, and they let us do the molds with her as well as they let us take pictures with her. But after she passed away, but I can't look at those pictures that they took. It's been almost 3 years, and I still can't put that jump drive into my computer and look at them.
Yeah. It's too hard sometimes. It's so hard.
Yeah. There was actually a nurse there that had lost her son. I think her son was stillborn.
Okay.
And so she came in and checked on us a lot. She was really sweet. She actually started crying too.
Yeah.
Because I was asking her, what do I do? And yeah, she started crying too.
Yep. It's such a terrible thing. It's so, yeah, it's devastating and to have to remember all of that. So you guys were able to do did you do hand and foot molds?
Yes.
Awesome.
Hand
And
and foot mouth. Her father is the one she did, one that they did with her father actually came out better than mine. I
oh,
still
really?
love mine. But those did come out a little better.
And then you guys got some photos, which is great. Was that something that the hospital did? Like that, were they able to take pictures, or were you guys just have cell phones and that type of thing and took pictures with her?
Actually, right after she passed, I told my ex I wanted a picture. I wanted a picture with her, so I can look at that one. That one's actually on my phone, and I did take a picture with her. I've never posted it. I've never shared it with anybody because, for me personally, I guess because I did see her alive, I don't want to post pictures of her not alive.
Yeah.
So that was just it for me. Like they're for my viewing only. They're
Hmm.
not for like the world's viewing. So I've never shared those.
Yeah. Those can be so precious and so, yeah, personal and private. And I think that's great. That's those should be yours. So you're in the hospital, you guys get to spend some time. Were you what were the next steps? What did they tell you about that? About how what needed to happen after she passed away?
So they basically told us, a social worker will be in contact with you. And I remember that part, and they gave me a few resources, but those were the main two things. I had a doctor, well, I think she was a nurse, who came out and told me she was like, I didn't know her long, but she was very feisty, and yeah, it, it hurt a lot.
Yeah. I like that. She was very feisty.
Yeah, I was happy that someone said something good about her.
Yeah, exactly. We want people to talk about our kids in a good light, right?
Yes.
So, social worker comes in, you get some resources. Do they tell you what needs to happen? Like, do they offer like, okay, you need to figure out what needs to happen in regards to her body?
That came later. Well, the social worker came later. They said that someone's going to be in contact with me. So I think there was a social worker there, but that's not the person that I end up talking to
Mhm.
afterwards. They
Mhm.
assigned me to someone else, and she was the one who called. She told me about. At first, I didn't even think about it after she died. That's the weird thing. I didn't think about what to do with her body. I never thought about that part. Like it never crossed my mind until they called me and asked me that I want to cremate her or have a funeral. And I told them I will call them back later while I was crying. Because at that point, well, I might have to back up a little bit. So I might need to start over a little bit. So we left the hospital.
Okay.
We went home. The baby stuff, like all the stuff we had for her, because we was in like there was like a certain program in the DC area where if you went to a few classes, they would give you stuff for your baby.
Mhm.
And so all the stuff, my ex had gotten the stuff while I was in the hospital and put it in the house because they was like, okay, since she's in the hospital now, she's probably gonna give birth early. We'll go ahead and give you everything. So all the stuff was basically in the living room.
Oh.
So I went like immediately in our bedroom and cried because I couldn't deal with the stuff in the living room.
Yeah.
I couldn't handle it. My ex moved everything until into the second bedroom that we had in our apartment,
Mm-hmm.
so that I couldn't come out. And my family actually came the next day
Yeah.
after everything happened because they're in Georgia, we're in the DC area, so they were afraid
Yeah.
for me. So they end up coming as well.
That's great. So they were able to be with you and help you with everything.
Yeah, they were able to come and help me. It was pretty difficult because I would just wake up and I would cry every day. Pretty much like after the first few days after she died, every day I would wake up in the morning and just cry because I knew she wasn't there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And like I couldn't pump. Like I was like full of milk, but I couldn't pump it because I'm like, I don't want to use the machine. I just didn't want to like touch it. I guess it hurts too much emotionally to touch it. So I was just like in pain. I could get a little bit out like in the shower and stuff, but I was hurting a lot, a little bit physically too. Someone told me some over the counter stuff that could help, and I did stuff like that, and that dried it up versus trying to pump anymore.
Yeah. Okay.
I couldn't get it. I couldn't do it.
Yeah. It's just another painful I think it's another painful reminder that your baby's not there. It stinks. So your family's home with you. It sounds like obviously you are so sad and crying a fair amount. Then is that when the social worker or the hospital asks calls and asks what you guys want to do with Khyana's body?
Yes, they called right because my ex he actually went back to work like 2 days later, I think, because the next day was a holiday, Memorial Day.
Mm-hmm.
The next day was a holiday, and the day after that he went back to work. So he was at my family was there, but he went straight back to work immediately. So when they called the social worker, I talked to her a little bit before that, but then she called one day and asked. So I knew they were doing an autopsy, so I knew that part, but I just didn't think about the what they're going to do with the body afterwards. Like no clue. And so when they call and ask, I'm like, I don't know what to do. And I'm just like crying like really hard. And my mom, she couldn't calm me down. And so my ex, he comes through, my boyfriend at the time, he comes through the door and we talk about it. Cause at first I kind of wanted to do a funeral.
Mm-hmm.
Then I decided not to. I don't, the thing to me personally, it feels weird to have a body just sitting in the ground in a casket forever. So I didn't want that for her. So we decided on cremation, and they actually cremated her for free.
Okay.
Yeah, it was some program that they had.
I do want to go back, Tiffany, about the autopsy. So they wanted to. So I'm assuming you consented to having an autopsy on Khyana to figure out what happened. So
Yeah.
was there anything conclusive about that?
Yeah, they told me so when it was finally over with, they called me up. They called me up and they had picked out a day. And they told me that it was a hard day because the doctor that was there for her, the social worker was like, hey, we thought she was going to be available. She was supposed to be available, but something happened. Did you want to reschedule or did you just want to talk to the person who did the autopsy? I'm like, well, I've been waiting long enough for this at this point. I'm like, I just want to talk to the person who did the autopsy.
Yeah,
You know,
and how long was that before you got that information?
um, can't quite remember. I think it was about 2 months.
Okay. I was going to
It
say
wasn't an immediate thing.
yeah, exactly. I know a lot of people think that an autopsy is done and then it's like, oh, it's like 3 days later. But I think that's one
Oh,
thing
I
that people,
wish.
yeah, that's one thing people I don't think realize is that autopsies take a lot of time to do because they have to evaluate tissues and write reports and everything like that. So it does take like 2 months, like 2 or 3 months sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So you did talk
Yeah.
to that doctor, or yeah, you probably talked to the doctor who performed the autopsy. So what did they say?
They told me that because of the hole in her bowel, um, she was it. The hole in her bowel was pretty much what killed her, and the fact that she was only like a pound and 13 ounces as well. I think they had, I'm not really sure what they said about her heart and lungs and stuff. I think those were kind of weak as well, which was typical. But the main thing that killed her was her size, an infection that she had, because she also had an infection in the hole in her bowel.
Yes. Okay. And so you're oh, that would yeah, that would be so hard. Did you guys do a any sort of memorial service? I know that you cremated her, but did you guys have any sort of memorial service for her? Since it sounds like your family was there and or nearby anyway.
Yeah, we did. Well, we went to Georgia and had it because my ex, he's from Georgia and I am as well. We're from different parts of
Gotcha.
Georgia, but we are both from Georgia. So we went to Georgia, went to my parents' house and had it. Some of his family came as well. And we had this big cookout. We had like someone said prayer before we ate. It was nice. We had drinks and it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. It wasn't like a sad thing. That's why I don't like funerals personally.
Yeah.
I would rather do a celebration of life thing, and just enjoy the short life that she did have. I don't want to sit around and like cry at a funeral. That's just me personally.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, I think that's how you would want to honor her, right? I mean, you don't want to
Yes.
be sitting around being sad. So that was probably that sounded like that was good and maybe healing to have that time together as a family and to think about her. I guess the question is how are you doing now? Like how has it been for you?
The month of May is always the hardest for me because her birthday, her death day, and Mother's Day is all in the same month.
And it is just that's yeah, like oh
It destroys me every month to the end. I'm a mess from the beginning of that month to about the end. Around the 29th, 30th is when I'm okay.
yeah,
But that whole month, I am a disaster.
yeah. It's just a reminder, right?
It's
Of
yeah, very
everything.
short reminder.
Just a reminder. Well, um, can you tell me a little bit more, anything more that you would like to tell us about Kayana, about who she
Um,
was, and like, yeah, anything that you want to tell us that you'd like to remember about her?
I like to remember how sometimes strong she actually had like a tight grip to be so small, with her hands and stuff so small. She actually had a really tight grip.
That's
And
great.
I was really happy about that. That she could actually, she was, I mean, she was 4 pound and 14 ounces. So she was like, weaker, but she really didn't she looked kind of weak, but she actually was a little strong for it. I saw muscles, like she had like muscles in her calves and stuff. And I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting that. I was just expecting like a frail, I guess a very frail, deformed
Yeah,
baby. I wasn't expecting. I know her insides were not, formed correctly, but on the outside, she just looked like an extremely small baby
yeah.
with muscle, with little bits of muscle. So yeah,
That's awesome. Well, Tiffany, thank you so much for sharing the story of your sweet daughter, Kayana, and
thank,
we appreciate you sharing it. It's always hard, and I hope this honors her.
thank you.